Grace had been working in the marketing department of the company for a year, when a handsome young man joined them as head of the sales department. His name was Hugh, and literally every single woman on the team tried to flirt with him. But it was Grace who attracted his attention by her simplicity and modesty. After a few months of working together, Hugh asked Grace out on a date and a romance began between them. They soon began to live together and Hugh introduced his beloved to his parents. They met her coldly, but the man assured Grace that they just needed time to get used to her. Hugh was successful, young and good-looking, and a careerist to boot. And Grace was a modest and shy girl from the provinces. Although Hugh did not show it, he was bothered by the fact that his parents did not accept the woman he had chosen. One day the man stopped by to visit his parents and met the daughter of his mother's friend. They had just returned from abroad and were visiting Hugh's mother. Sharon turned out to be a charming young woman with an excellent European education. His mother's friend was the wife of a diplomat, and for almost 15 years they lived in Paris. Hugh was at once fascinated by the velvety timbre of Sharon's voice. The young woman spoke with a slight French accent, which sounded sexy and suited her very well. Hugh was deep in conversation and didn't notice his mother's meaningful glance at her friend. The very next day, at his mother's insistence, Hugh invited Sharon to a restaurant. And soon they were meeting regularly. The new acquaintance was strikingly different from Grace. Sharon could talk for hours about her travels or funny incidents that happened abroad. She was distinguished by her refined manners and impeccable taste. Hugh completely lost his head. At the same time he still loved his simple Grace from the country and could not dare to tell her everything. Hugh lied to her that he went on business trips, and this time he spent with Sharon. The deception weighed on the guy and he could not figure out how to get out of this situation and not offend anyone. And then the day came when Sharon told Hugh that she no longer intended to be number two. They lay in bed, and Hugh put his arm around the girl's waist and tried to explain that he didn't want to hurt Grace. But Sharon demanded that Hugh make a choice and then went into the shower. Hugh lay alone in bed, listening to the sound of water and thought it was really time for him to make up his mind. He couldn't cheat on Grace anymore, she didn't deserve it. The man finally decided to leave her. At this time, on the other side of the city, Grace had just found out that she was pregnant. Hugh, in her opinion, was on a business trip and she decided to share the happy news with her friend Regina. But at first Regina kept silent and then reluctantly told Grace that a couple of hours ago she had seen Hugh entering an exclusive hotel with a beautiful woman in his arms. Grace refused to believe what she had just heard. But Regina offered to come and see everything for herself. By an odd coincidence, a close friend of hers worked at the hotel and could help Grace get inside. Grace hailed a cab and set off toward the unknown. Martha's friend gave her a suite card and explained how to get there. Grace found herself in a huge luxurious suite, quietly crossed the living room. Through a half-open bedroom door she saw a sleeping Hugh and an unfamiliar beautiful woman. Hot tears silently rolled from Grace's eyes and she cautiously walked toward the exit. Hugh opened his eyes, he thought he heard the front door close. The man turned his head toward Sharon and realized that he was just imagining things, and then fell soundly asleep. Grace cried all night and wondered what to do next. In the morning the woman made a decision. She took a leave of absence from work, packed her things and took them to the luggage room at the train station. And then she went to the clinic to have an abortion. She left the apartment without even leaving Hugh a goodbye note. Grace was just at a doctor's appointment when Hugh called. He wanted to see her for a serious conversation, and Grace realized that he hadn't been home yet and didn't know that she had left. Trying not to show her feelings, she asked Hugh to call her back and threw the phone down on the table. The doctor told the woman that the abortion was scheduled for tomorrow at 12 noon, handed her a list of recommendations, and reassured her that everything should go easily. Grace did not notice that in her haste to drop the phone, she forgot to press the disconnect button and Hugh heard everything the doctor told her. The guy was stunned. He turned and looked at Sharon. She was sitting at the dressing table and making up. Suddenly this woman seemed completely unfamiliar to him, too mannered and unnatural. How could he be so infatuated with her and so distant from Grace, deceiving his beloved? The man jumped up and began quickly packing his things into a large sports bag. These actions surprised Sharon, who asked where he was going. Then Hugh said that he had made the choice she had asked him yesterday, and that he could not leave Grace, whom he loved. Sharon reacted surprisingly calmly, waved her hand, noting that it's not in her rules to fight for a man who doesn't love her, and continued with her makeup. Hugh rushed home and found that Grace's things were gone in the apartment and her phone was unavailable. In a panic, Hugh decided to call her friend Regina, who told him that Grace had found out and seen everything with her own eyes. The guy was so depressed and pathetic that Martha realized he was really sorry and told him the address of the clinic. The next day, Hugh was sitting in his car outside the clinic, waiting for Grace to show up. When he saw her, he immediately jumped out of the car and called out. Grace was surprised at Hugh's appearance. But she did not want to communicate with him, and the guy hardly managed to convince her to give him at least 5 minutes. Hurriedly and impetuously, Hugh began to say that he felt as if he had been bewitched and that he had only now realized how much he loved her and that he could not live without her. The man asked for forgiveness and not to have an abortion. And then Hugh pulled a box with an engagement ring out of his pocket. The guy looked at Grace with a pleading look in his eyes and vowed to make things right and be the best father and husband ever. That day, Grace didn't have an abortion, but she didn't accept Hugh's proposal either. She promised to think it over. The young man had to prove his love all over again. Until the birth, he tried every day to make Grace forgive him. When Grace gave birth to a boy, Hugh came to the ward with a huge bouquet of flowers. The young mother was resting in bed with the baby lying nearby. Hugh put the flowers in a vase, quietly approached his son and tenderly began to consider him. Grace observed for some time the love with which Hugh looked at their child, then said that the boy resembled his father. Hugh walked over to Grace's bedside, began kissing her hands and thanking her for her son and for giving him a chance to be around. Then Grace told him that she agreed. The young man did not immediately understand what she meant, but when he got it, his joy had no limits. Grace looked at a satisfied Hugh and smiled. Everyone in life should have a second chance to correct their mistakes. She opened her kind heart and let faith and hope for a brighter future into it. Who knows what will happen next, but she was determined to be happy now.